Hi, what's up guys? Welcome back to our YouTube channel. Okay, hi everyone. Welcome to our SEL biology video. So I am Nur Wafa.
I am Maisara Mirza, and today we are going to talk about community and ecosystem ecology.
Yes. What are we talking about? Community and ecosystem ecology. So in this video, we are going to have two parts, which is the first part is about ecology of community
And community development.
Yeah, so without wasting more time, let's jump into part 1. Okay, so the first thing that we need to know in this topic is the meaning of ecology and community. The meaning of ecology is the study between the organisms and their environments, while community is different species interacting with one another in the same environment. So why do we need to learn about this topic? So the ultimate reason why we need to learn about this topic is because we want to protect our nature as well as prevent the extinction of these species, because when we learn about the ecology of community, we can know about their habitats, what is their interactions and the minimum population size for their survival, so that we can avoid from doing their action that can lead to their extinction. Get it? Woo! Okay, so done with the definitions, let's discuss about the community. So in the community, we need to know the community structure. So community structure can be divided by two, which is the species composition and also species diversity. Species composition is a listing of different species that can be found in the community. So community, the example of community is community of a pond, community of tropical forest, or even a wood can be a community of this organism. So the second one is the species diversity. So the species diversity is the measure of species richness and also species evenness. Okay, so how to differentiate between these two elements? Okay, so can you look at these two pictures? The first one is the tropical forest and the second one is the coniferous forest. Okay, so the listings of the animals or plants that can be found in the tropical forest and the coniferous forest is what we call as the species composition. And we look at the numbers of the listings is what we call as species richness. Okay, the more numbers of listings, we have a higher species richness. Okay, and then we need to look at each species. Okay, look at each species, which one have more numbers of it. So we call it as species evenness, the same species. Okay, look at the same species. Forest community with 20 different kinds of trees would have greater species diversity than a community with only 5 kinds of trees. The second example, a forest community with 20 different kinds of trees in even abundance would have greater species diversity than a forest community with the same number of species in very uneven abundance. Okay, so let's move on to the second subtopic, which is the community interaction. So there are a few things that we need to understand in the community interaction, which is the habitat and ecological niche, competitions, predations and also symbiotic relationship. So habitat and ecological niche. Habitat is basically where the organism lives, grows and thrives. Whereas niche is the functional role played by the organism in its ecosystem. Okay, so let's see this example to understand the correlation between habitat and its niche. The dragonfly larva eats other insects in the pond. It is the niche. The pond, which is the habitat, must contain vegetation so that the dragonfly larva can hide from its predator, and also it must be clean and warm in order for the larva to be active. Okay, so another example of community interaction is competition. So competition is an interaction between organisms in which both require the same resource, which is in a limited supply. For example, water, food and territory. So we also need to understand about the competition exclusive principle. In this principle, it stated that two species can have the same niche in a habitat for both to stably coexist, for both to live. Okay, so when two species have same identical niche, it also means that it have identical needs, which will lead to the competition. Look at this graph. When Paramecium aurelia lives alone, the number of cells increase day by day. Same goes to Paramecium caudatum when it lives alone. But what happens when both species live together? The number of Paramecium aurelia is increasing, while Paramecium caudatum is decreasing and eventually becoming zero. Therefore, species can have same niche in a habitat for them to survive. Okay, so to avoid competition, we have resource partitioning. Resource partitioning is the division of resources in order to decrease competition between the species. For example, we have resource partitioning of the feed area or time. Look at this picture. What can you understand? We can see that the different species of anole lizards live at the different part of the trees. This is what we call as resource partitioning. Other example of resource partitioning is temporal partitioning. So, for example, hawks and owls feed at different times of day. Okay, so another example of community interaction is predator-prey interaction. So, predation is basically an interaction which one organism will become the predator that kill other organism, which is the prey. So, I will be explaining about three things, which is the predator-prey population dynamic, prey defenses, and also the mimicry. Look at this popular example to illustrate about the predator-prey population dynamic between Canada lynx and snowshoe hare. During peak years, the hare devour all the available vegetation and quite literally breed like rabbits until the environment can no longer support their blossoming population. As the hares become weakened by starvation, the lynx are better able to find and kill them, adding to their decline. The population does not re-establish itself immediately because it takes time for the vegetation to grow back. Okay, so here come to the interesting part in this topic, which is the prey defenses. Okay, so prey defenses is the mechanism that the animal use to avoid from being eaten by the predator. So there are lots of ways that they use, such as warning colorization, trickery, camouflage, and also animals that move in group. So these are all the mechanism that they use. Okay, so this is the last part of the predator-prey interactions, which is mimicry. Okay, so mimicry is one animal or one species resembles another species which have recognizable characteristic. Okay, so today we will discuss two types of mimicry, which is the Batesian mimicry and the other one is Mullerian mimicry. So how to differentiate between these two mimicry? Batesian mimicry, a non-toxic or non-dangerous species, mimics a toxic and dangerous species, while Mullerian mimicry, one or more potentially dangerous, resemble each other. The example of the Batesian mimicry is the scarlet king snake, which is non-venomous snake, mimics the fleshy trait of the coral snake that is highly venomous to make the predator think that it is a harmful species. The example of the Mullerian mimicry is the bumblebee and the yellow jacket wasp. Both insects are harmful and noxious. They mimic each other's appearance so that the predator will avoid them as a category. Okay, so we have come to the last part of the community interaction, which is the symbiotic relationship. I know we all have learned about this, but we are just going to recap about this. Okay, so symbiosis or symbiotic relationship is any interactions or relationship between dissimilar organisms. So basically, we have three types of symbiotic relationship, which is mutualism, parasitism, and commensalism. After a long
I'm waiting for Wafa to explain everything to you all. Now it's my turn, and I will talk to you about the community development. In the community development sector, we have ecological succession, types of ecological succession, the stages of ecological succession, and we will talk about the energy flow, the energy pyramid, and the biotic components. Now, ecological succession is a change within the community involving a series of species replacement. Before we go deeper into this topic, we need to know that there are two types of ecological succession, which is the primary and the secondary succession.
Fire leaves behind empty but not destroyed soil. Grasses and other plants grow back first. Small bushes and trees begin to colonize the area. Next, fast-growing evergreen trees develop to their fullest, while shade-tolerant trees develop underneath. Eventually, larger deciduous trees will grow over them, and the ecosystem is similar but different from where it began. These disturbances can actually be healthy for an area over time because they can lead to increased biodiversity.
So what can we actually conclude after watching the video? So basically, as I showed on the previous slide, where secondary succession is a disturbance-based succession in which there is a progressive change from grasses to shrubs to a mixture of shrubs and trees. So actually, a disturbance caused by fire or flood or even tsunami can actually be healthy for an area over time because they can lead to an increased biodiversity. So what does that actually mean? So it means that when a disturbance occurs, it will clear the land and the land will grow out a new kind of grasses that will eventually turn to be a high trees and ended up becoming a climax community.
We are going to talk about dynamics of an ecosystem. Now, are you excited about this? The dynamics of an ecosystem include category of biotics components, which are autotroph and heterotroph. Autotroph is an organism that requires inorganic nutrients, an outside energy source to produce organic nutrients for their own use. While heterotroph are organisms that need to form organic nutrients they can use as an energy source. Now, let's talk about energy flow. Energy flow is the flow of energy through living things within an ecosystem. All living organisms can be organized into producers and consumers, and those producers and consumers can further be organized into a food chain. Here's an example of a food chain, or mainly known as food web. The last part of community development is the ecological pyramid. Last but not least, I'll show you guys a video on how can a food web and the ecological pyramid connect to each other to enhance our understanding on this topic.
Now, food chains and webs are useful, but using ecological pyramids we can show even more information. We will look at the following two food chains in these pyramid forms in order to compare them. So we've got this grass, rabbit, fox food chain, we've got the oak tree, caterpillar, blue tit and sparrowhawk food chain. So let's first show them as a pyramid of numbers. Now what you do is you plot each trophic level as a separate block. The size of each block is related to the number of organisms. The height of the block has to stay the same, but it's the width that's important. Now the producer goes first at the base. So those two food chains, the producer was the grass and the oak tree. Now we've got a lot of grass, so it's a pyramid of numbers, so it's a big section there. The oak tree is only one, so you can see it's very, very narrow. Rabbits, there are less rabbits eating than there are numbers of grass, but there are actually way more caterpillars eating the oak tree, so that's got a much bigger wedge, let's say, than the oak tree. Blue tit's smaller, and sparrowhawk, there's only a couple that eat the blue tits. So there's a pyramid of numbers. Now, biomass is a total amount of living material in an organism. It's quite hard to measure, but it produces more useful results. The easiest way to do it is to multiply the number at each level by the dry mass, that means the mass without the water, of one of the organisms. So if you know the dry mass of a particular height of an oak tree, for example, then you could then multiply that by how many you've got, which in this case would be 1. And we can see therefore that the mass, the biomass of the oak tree is obviously huge. So when before we had that little stumpy bit at the bottom of our pyramid, we've now got a massive section at the bottom of that pyramid there. The grass, the total mass of the grass is quite high, more than the rabbit and the fox. So you can see that pyramid of biomass tends to produce more of our typical pyramid shapes, even for the food chain there with the oak tree.
To conclude the topic that we have learnt today, it can be said that species richness and species evenness are the components that make up species diversity. On top of that, the ecological niche of an organism depends on the habitat and the community interactions. Interactions among species alter the population size, as well as the rates of evolution to build up the community.